This is Subject to Approval, where we dive into the chaos, challenges and curveballs of today's business and agency world. No jargon, no waffle, just fast, fearless conversations about what's breaking and what's working in your business today. Hello. My name is Steve McGuinness, and this is the Artemis Subject to Approval podcast. I'm flying solo today, so the smarter half, Rebecca, isn't with me to censor check and keep me under control. So this should be an interesting 10-15 minutes. Today's topic is going to be around scope creep. Scope creep is probably the single biggest contributor to issues around profitability and margin. Scope creep is essentially where the proposal has a set value, set deliverables, set resources allocated, and you just go way over it, knowingly or unknowingly. Now, a lot of agencies are not even aware that the scope creep issues are there. Some are and aren't sure what the causes are. So I'm going to frame the challenge of scope creep and the solutions along with the 3 P's. Now, not product, placement, price that you might think, but I'm thinking about the principles around the Pareto principle, Parkinson's law, and the Peter principle. Now, Pareto, you may be very aware of around the 80-20. Parkinson's law says that a task expands to fill the time available, and Peter's principle hypothesizes that most people are acting at a level of relative incompetence in their roles. So how does that relate to scope creep, and how can that help us overcome it? On a personal story, I took over a set of agency offices, and within a year of taking them over, managed to turn around their fortunes. We went from in the region of $1 million loss to the region of $1 million profit across the locations. Revenue stayed the same and fixed costs stayed essentially the same. We increased the profit not by driving up the amount of work, nor by increasing the prices or by laying people off. What we did was we really focused on this issue around scope creep and put in place measures to ensure the clients were always getting what they paid for, but they were getting what they paid for. And that removed a lot of time, overruns, client dissatisfaction with things that they've been promised, even though they shouldn't have got them, freelance costs, etc. So let's talk about this in a little bit of detail. There is a saying, there's no such thing as bad clients. Agencies get the clients they deserve. And in some ways, we nurture as agencies those behaviors that later come back and hit us in the back of the head with a stick. So we know that 80% of our problems, according to the Pareto principle, and probably 80% of our scope creep is from 20% of the clients. Now, there's a number of reasons why the scope creep occurs with this small number of clients. Often the clients simply don't know what they want in the first place, so never know when you give it to them. And the rigor around deliverables wasn't in place at the proposal stage or isn't being enforced. So it's another round of tweaks. It's another round of revision. It's the I'll know it when I see it, which of course never happens. So the answer to that really is around understanding what that client brief is, formalizing it, repeating it back to it, getting full buy-in, not just of the intent, but of the scope before you start. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. There's also the danger of the offhand requests. The work is shown to the client, the concepts are shown, and an offhand comment like, oh, I wonder what that would have looked like in blue, that has not troubled the mind of the giver, whether that's a CEO talking to his team or a client speaking to the agency. It's one of the thousands of random thoughts popping around their head. Oh, it's my daughter's birthday. Oh, I wonder if the dog's okay today. Oh, where did I park my car? Oh, what would that look like in blue? And out it verbalizes. Then that's taken on board as a direction. The client manager goes back to the agency, client wanted it in blue, and we spend a whole amount of time. And a week later, we go back to the client with a whole set of work. Here's the strategy around which blue to use. Here's our creative palette board around the blues. And here is the whole work done in blue for you. And the client or the CEO goes, what the heck is that? They had no idea that their observation was becoming a request.
The other is just the one more. Could I just get one more? How about I have one more? When they genuinely do say, yeah, what would that have looked like in blue? Can you show me that in blue? And the question on that is really, how much do they want to say it? Are they saying something because there's a gap in the conversation and they feel the need to fill the air? There is something around being happy that makes us feel a bit stupid. If we're shown something and we go, wow, that's great, I love it, it reflects to ourselves somehow without engaging that critical thinking that maybe we're being a bit easily led. So even if we do think, wow, that's amazing, there's always the, what would it have looked like in blue? Now, is it a genuine request? Is it based on anything? The acid test is to turn around and say, no problem at all. We can go away and bring it back to you in blue, but that isn't part of the existing scope. So we will need to add an additional set of costs on for that. 90% of the time, they didn't really bother seeing it in blue. And 10% of the time, it's some extra revenue. So win-win. The other element is around Parkinson's law. So this idea that the work will fill the time available. And again, it's easy to notionally say this task 1 day, this task 4 hours, this task 2.5 hours for 2 people, etc., etc., without really drilling down into what that means. But if you give somebody 3 days to do a task, they would usually take 3 days to do that task. If at the end of that, we discover that that wasn't actually exactly what you needed, there's another day to carry on with it. If we give people a small amount of time, they will deliver the work in that amount of time. So perhaps we can be a little bit more challenging, or at worst, break that 3 days up into review sections at each day. Maybe it has been done quicker. Maybe it's gone off on a wrong direction and he's pulling back. Maybe this has gone something we weren't expecting, but that's a good thing and we can double down and run with it. I recall having a project in Indonesia and briefing the team in the morning and coming back at the end of the day and talking to one of the creatives. And the poor guy turning around and saying, I didn't really understand what you wanted. I haven't done anything because I didn't want to do it wrong. Now, there is a danger in people just being frozen with a deadline, with a time demand, with an expectation. Freeze. And when we give a day, and sometimes that's really generated not much at all. Interestingly, AI is a great solution to what people call the white page problem. Just can't get started. AI is a great way of blasting some ideas out, which are mostly wrong, but using a good starting point to not eating too much of that available time. And as Parkinson says, we will use it if we've got it. Then the last point is around this idea of the Peter principle, that most people are operating at a level of incompetence. The logic being, you're good at a job, you get promoted. You're good at that job, you get promoted. You're good at that job, you get promoted. That job, you're not so good at, so you don't get promoted. So most people, according to the Peter principle, are operating at a level of relative incompetence, certainly not mastery of their role. Otherwise, they would have moved on. Now, that's not strictly true. Some people don't necessarily want the bigger role, the more responsibility. They enjoy doing what they do. They feel rewarded and fulfilled by what they do. And I personally don't believe many people aren't that bright. I certainly don't believe many people are lazy, certainly not in our industry. There are much lower pressure industries we could be in. Where that happens and we have those issues that we talked about with the Pareto of the no pushback, the woolly scope, the failure to understand exactly what the brief was, I don't think that's poor understanding or laziness. I think it is a lack of training. It's a lack of expertise. It's a lack of skills. And this gap has been brought about by the consistent absence of formal training in our industry. It's developed from the fragmentation of our workplaces, less time spent face to face, less time organically learning, less time observing how things are done, less over the shoulder moments, and a complete absence of what Rebecca calls warm mentoring, where we have those unofficial, unstructured conversations with senior people who take an interest in what we're doing. We can bounce ideas off. So we need to step back and look at these issues of scope creep, not just as something that's inevitable, but as something that can be fixed once the principles are understood and once the teams have been developed in a way that they know how to prevent those situations. They know how to deal with those situations when they come along, and they know how to utilize those situations to the benefit of the project and to the benefit of the teams. And at the end of it, giving the client a value fulfilling output above or beyond their expectations. And that's not going to magically happen. People aren't going to suddenly wake up on Monday morning with a whole skill set that they previously lacked. It requires a formal training and coaching structure to help people make that leap. So they're operating at a point by which these are commonsensical, low consideration decisions and practices that stop that scope creep. And as I said, scope creep, the single biggest negative impact on profitability and margin. And as a wise man once said, it ain't what you make, it's what you keep that matters. And driving that top line, and we're all about driving that top line, growth, doesn't mean anything if it disappears before it gets to the bottom line. So we would love to talk to you about this. We have some fantastic programs around growth, around talent transformation, around ongoing learning. We'd love to work with you to deliver to your teams. So I'm Stephen McGuinness, and that was about 12 minutes on scope creep in the context of the 3 Ps, and an invitation to get in touch, see what we can do together and really drive things for the future.
Work can be tough, but you don't have to figure it out alone. We're here to help for coaching, workshops, or just a smart second opinion. Let's talk. Contact hello@artemisapac.com. We're Artemis, and we get it.